Today's special guest is my old buddy, Rick Wilson, co-founder of the Lincoln Project, a former Republican political consultant who has been around the block a time or two and has gained national acclaim as a never-Trumper. Stick with us. We talk about Ron DeSantis's political future, Casey DeSantis's aspirations. We talk about the Zieglers, the Republican Party of Florida, and for some of you other old timers around, we take a little stroll in the Wayback Machine and talk about Tom Slade. So stick with us. You don't want to miss it. Rick Wilson on A Deeper Dive.
DeSantis has challenged God in the minds of the MAGA base.
You're listening to A Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida.
Okay, hello and welcome to A Deeper Dive with me, Dara Cam, and today's special guest is Rick Wilson. You know him, you've read his books, you've seen him on television, you've heard him on podcasts, one of the founders of the Lincoln Project, never Trumper. Good morning, my old friend.
Hello, my friend. How are you today?
I am fantastic. I am so delighted to have you with me. And I mean, I feel like all I need to do is just throw out words and you can riff on them. So how about Florida, the gift that keeps on giving?
Well, you know, there was a great expectation this year that Florida was going to be this amazing political battleground where Donald Trump would finally meet his match in the mighty Ron DeSantis. And it turns out that he's going to beat Ron DeSantis in his home state by 40 points.
40 points. Okay, there you go.
Oh, yeah. By the time you get to Florida, the preference cascade will have occurred in the three early states and on Super Tuesday. And at that point, by the time he gets to Florida, Donald Trump will have almost 35% of the delegates he needs to win the nomination. The DeSantis people keep confusing having some cash in the bank, which they have very little of now relative to earlier in the year, with a position where they are angling for victory, and it's just not there.
Is it his personality? Is it his style? Or is it just that the party of Trump is just so deep in the Kool-Aid that there's no one else, they can't accept anyone else?
Trump's power over the base of the party is unmatched. It's peerless. But it would have helped if Ron DeSantis did not come across as a creepy automaton at every moment. It would have helped if Ron DeSantis had some small shred or sense of joy or optimism or hope or charisma or style or the cadence of a great speaker. And he just never did and never has. And the DeSantis people, I mean, from Ron and Casey on down, conflated the fact that he inherited this amazing Death Star of a political party in Florida with having actual political skill. And he didn't, and he doesn't. And this is a guy who's not good on the stump. He's not good with people. And it is, yes, you can train yourself to be a better speaker and a better debater. God knows I've trained a lot of people to become better speakers and better debaters. But at some point, you either have the gift or you don't have the gift. And Hillary Clinton didn't have the gift. And Ron DeSantis...
It's called charisma.
Yeah, it is. It is charisma. And in a weird sort of Trumpian way, they thought that DeSantis would have this sort of inverse charisma, like I'm the biggest a-hole in the room. I'm the one that can be the meanest, the crappiest to people.
So anti-charisma.
And while that works with this narrow slice of very online weirdos, it doesn't work when you're in a diner in New Hampshire,
right?
And the Republican County Executive Committee chairman says to Ron DeSantis, I want to go to breakfast with you. And Ron has to sit there with some 78-year-old codger for 2 hours listening to the guy's thoughts about the gold standard.
And he leaves his leaves his AirPods in the whole time.
He does. And And he's likely to say stuff that just comes across as, I mean, look, the fundamental thing is Americans love eccentric, but they hate weird politically. Okay? It's okay to have a few quirks. John McCain was quirky as shit. And Trump is quirky. I don't like him, but he's quirky and he can be funny. But DeSantis is weird and not funny. And again, if you don't have that level of the ability to engage with people, you're never going to make it in this business. Now, look, going back to your question though about Florida, that's the gift that keeps on giving. Two things are happening right now underneath our feet. The first is the rising Republican establishment, most perfectly symbolized by the Zieglers in Sarasota.
I shouldn't laugh because there's an alleged victim, but it is just...
and I've written a lot about it, and I've talked a lot about the seriousness of the allegation of sexual assault and rape is not in any way funny.
No.
But the behavior of the Zieglers in defending themselves gives you a window into like where the Florida Republican Party is going in the immediate future. And it is this Trumpian post-shame party. I mean, this morning I read in the Sarasota Herald-Trib, probably the craziest fucking headline I've ever seen. Sorry.
That's okay. Just go for it. You know me.
I've ever seen. It's Ziegler, defiant Christian Ziegler says he will stay in office, compares himself to Trump. And I'm thinking, you mean the same Donald Trump that a court has recently adjudicated to be a rapist? Is that really the flex you're looking for there, Christian? But look, you've got Moms for Liberty was this rising force, beloved in the DeSantis universe. Bridget and Casey were, spiritual soulmates or whatever they said about each other in their fight for the children. And it turns out
it's all about the kids.
It turns out that Bridget is, part of, on the funny side of the equation, the Moms for Liberty book burning morality police, that are the Iranian Committee for the Prevention of Vice and the Promotion of Virtue that beat women in the streets. That group was so powerful, and she was riding and coasting on the power of that group. And so she's involved with a three-way with her husband and this woman. And now she's defending her husband, who is under investigation for rape and sexual assault, who is on camera, who videotaped the sex act, whether it was violent or consensual. He videotaped it. It is now a known quantity. Listen, if you've got a guy like that, who clearly has some issues and problems. He's running the entire Republican Party of Florida. The entire party apparatus is like, please quit. The school board last night in Sarasota, where Bridget Ziegler sits, is writing, unanimously votes except for her,
right,
please quit. And they won't quit. So what you're seeing is a preview of the Republican Party of Florida transforming, like a lot of other state Republican parties have in the national party, into sort of a trolling operation, and an operation that is completely defiant of any of their past moral statements or principles, and completely defiant of any kind of shame or social accountability or any kind of social pressure that normal people, listen, if I knew somebody who was a rapist or an accused rapist, I'd be like, yeah, you know what, don't come to dinner. Not now. If you're cleared, call me, but not now. And by the way, if I was accused of rape and I videotaped it and I was on camera and the police have the information and the victim statements and everything else, my fiance would probably put a bullet in my head rather than be happy about it. And Bridget seems to be completely cool with this whole thing. So it really tells you where the party has evolved to, that even Ron DeSantis, who had made a sort of pro forma, like he should step down while he's under the investigation, everyone is innocent, proven guilty. Even Ron DeSantis doesn't seem to have the power to get rid of this guy.
I wanted to ask you about that. What does that say about DeSantis's sway in Florida, or has he just checked out? I mean, is he just all in on not,
let me say this.
Somebody, just one,
Dara,
go ahead.
he still has the positional power of being the governor. That positional power in the lobbying world in Tallahassee, they are all walking around on eggshells because they know he can veto all their legislation. They know he can cause a lot of chaos in the coming session in a matter of weeks. Mm-hmm. And so they're very scared of doing or saying the wrong thing. In the meantime, every single major money lobbyist in the state is quietly calling Susie Wiles down in Mar-a-Lago going, hey, listen, we're going to be all right. You give me a little bit of time. I'm going to make this right. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of Don. We've always loved him. We just had to. The shamelessness of the situation cannot be overstated when it comes to that. Now, as for the rest of the state, all the people that endorsed Ron DeSantis, who are in the legislature, who are slowly peeling off to Donald Trump or quickly peeling off to Donald Trump, they're beginning to coalesce. It's not there yet. It's sort of like quiet quitting and silent resistance. There are things that are going to happen in the session this time that will. I don't think the red carpet, yes, my lord, behavior of the past will have the same degree of presence in their lives as it did in prior sessions with DeSantis.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of talk about they're going to get their own back and they're going to butch up. And I just don't see that.
Let me be clear about something. I am not asserting that they're going to go out and say, you're an asshole, Ron, fuck you. You're not going to get any bills passed. What they are going to do is say, oh yes, the governor's bill to make going to Disney a war crime is going to have 17 committee assignments. They will play games. Again, it's like quiet quitting. They're walking away from him. Now, I will also say this. Remember, the politics in the Republican primary is all about the cascade. So when Trump wins Iowa and DeSantis is in a distant second, when Trump wins New Hampshire and Nikki is in a distant second, when Trump wins South Carolina and Nikki is in a distant second, Ron is in a distant third, you then go to Super Tuesday, where Donald Trump, with just 2 states on Super Tuesday, that are winner-take-all states, where he is currently leading DeSantis by 50 to 55 points, Texas and California, plus all the other Super Tuesday winner-take-all states, you then get to the point where on March 12th, the Florida primary hits. If it's not over by then, which I think it will be, on March 13th, every single endorser for Ron DeSantis will be in the tall grass. He's not going to have any more stands and any more, Ron Hotties out there who are ready to blow themselves up for this guy, because his career is over. What is the lesson we've learned about Trump and challenging Trump as a Republican? Once you do it, you're not in the party anymore. Look, I'm the first guy who learned it in the country, like the first in 2015. And so like Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and all these other people who were rock stars back in their day, Ron DeSantis has challenged God in the minds of the MAGA base. He has attempted to spit in the face of the Lord. And while he may stick around and while he may still have some residual, again, positional power as governor, they're done. He's done. And I don't think you're going to see a lot of glowing articles written saying, Ron DeSantis ran such a great campaign, he just couldn't beat Trump. He's the front runner for 2028. That ain't it, bro.
I was just listening to another podcast. I think it was a Washington Post podcast this morning, and they were talking about sort of like the flailing nature of the how Nikki Haley is gaining traction and she's doing it on a pretty tight budget, and she's got a really tight circle, and they're not leaking. And meanwhile, there's been, for the past couple of weeks, a story a day practically about turmoil in the super PAC. And, I'll spend a whole hour talking about the overt connection between governor's presidential campaign and the super PAC, but that's a story for another day. But, just like it's imploding, I think, is a word that has been used many times. And yet DeSantis, one of the things that he always talks about is winning by 20 points in his reelection in Florida and turning Florida into like a beet red state, and it's not a swing state anymore. I guess the problem, you're a Florida man, part-time Florida man. I don't know if you're still a Florida man.
I'm still a full-time Florida man.
Okay, great. So, part of the problem is, it seems to me, as somebody who's been covering politics here for a long time, we've known each other a long time, like, you cannot imprint Florida onto the nation. Florida is is like, we are our own. This is why there is the hashtag Florida man hashtag, right?
Dara, let me say this. I think I know where your question is headed, because it's something I think about all the time. Florida, to give people a quick history lesson, I go back to 1987, 88 first with Connie Mack and then with the Bush HW campaign. We were very much a purple state then. It was not a Republican state. It was very much a state that was in play. You could have said leaning Democratic in the beginning of 88, but it evolved. Over time, patterns of migration into the state tended to come from places like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, New York, New Jersey. A lot of those people were Republicans who hated those states because of taxes, because of property taxes, because of the hassle. A lot of people also came here because they were older and they wanted a warm place to die. And to put it as bluntly as I can.
Yeah.
And so we have this top-heavy demographic white dude problem in Florida and when it comes to elections. Now, the second thing that happened back in 1992 and 94, you had this party chairman, you'll remember, but most folks don't, is a guy named Tom Slade. And folks, Tom Slade was like a little fire plug of a man. He was a son of a bitch.
I loved me some Tom Slade.
He was a son of a bitch,
Yeah.
two-fisted, like a hard-drinking, hard-living guy. Yeah. And he's like somebody out of a Carl Hiaasen novel, honestly. Tom Slade had a bunch of guys put together this plan that all of us implemented on for years. It was called Wipeout. And one version was Sledgehammer, but long story short, that plan was meant from the ground up to take over the state of Florida. And it was like, we're not going to try to go and win every big race. We're going to try to win county commission, mosquito control board, which is a thing in Florida, folks. Mm-hmm. Sheriff's office races, all these small ball things. And within 6 years, we had built enough of a farm team. The Senate tied and then flipped. The House tied and then flipped. And as this thing has marched on, the Republicans did something very smart. They had son of a bitches who were willing to go to the lobbying community and say, oh yeah, hey, I'm from the Senate committee, and I just want you to know, if you guys are giving money to those guys, we're going to have a problem. And the House and the Senate became these receptacles of enormous sums of money. Enormous, insane sums of money. We started spending in Florida, in the Republican side, on state House races and state Senate races, what some people would spend on a congressional in another state. And believe me, I made a very fine living doing ads for these people. Mm-hmm. And it was like, people were like, why aren't you going after the Indiana 2 congressional race? Because I can stay home and do the Florida 14 Senate race and make twice as much money.
Right.
And so long story short, this amazing institutional ability to run and win campaigns was built up in Florida. Now, how else did they do it? The Democrats took a suicide pact with themselves, and they said, we're only going to nominate people that are acceptable to our 3 core counties, Broward, Dade, and Palm Beach County. And those people are unelectable in the rest of Florida. And I give people tough love all the time. I've written about this extensively. North of I-4, you should understand that Florida is as conservative as Northwest Pakistan. And that means the messages you think work in South Florida are poison in North Florida. I can go through them easily. Gun control,
Yep.
climate change, race, voting rights, abortion, all those things for roughly 50% of the state are poison.
I don't know. The only thing I disagree with you on those topics is maybe abortion. There might be a little bit of leeway on abortion.
I agree with you on that, especially post Dobbs.
Yeah.
But
you're right. I mean, I live here. We live in Tallahassee, right? So how when the cable guy comes over, you know what he talks about. He does just completely.
Those godless communists from South Florida are coming to have sex with my dog and take my gun.
And they first say, "I'm not into politics."
The biggest tell of anybody is, "I'm not into politics," and they have like a Trump Punisher
Right.
sticker on the back of their truck.
Right,
You know?
right. We'll be right back with Rick Wilson.
Here at Deeper Dive, we want to hear from you, the listeners. We invite you to send your questions, comments, and feedback to our mailbag. You can reach us at deeperdive@cityandstatefl.com. That's deeperdive@cityandstatefl.com. Get your 2 cents in by sending us an email.
Welcome back to a Deeper Dive with Dara.
But look, I mean, the state is not what the Democrats believe it to be. And I will say this also. The last 2 statewide governor's race candidates were absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And first we have Andrew Gillum, who, like a lot of places, the progressive world saw young, smart, African-American, and they thought, oh, we have Obama 2.0. They didn't. He was not a good candidate. He was not a candidate who was able to connect with people outside of some very narrow areas. Now, he had been mayor of Tallahassee, which, folks, for your knowledge, in that Northwest Pakistan, that sea of red in North Florida, Leon County, where we live, is a tiny, itty bitty little pond of blue.
Yeah, we're an outlier. We are an outlier.
By far. So Gillum, he made every mistake in the book. DeSantis was running a terrible campaign, but Gillum just didn't have the thing to connect with voters outside of a more progressive base. And he felt, you could see Gillum hesitated to talk more broadly than the things that were working so well for him to raise money among very wealthy Democrats. Okay. And so DeSantis beats him by folks, literally, you could put Doak Campbell Stadium, you could fill the average ACC stadium with the number of people DeSantis won by. It was de minimis, 60,000 votes, call it.
It was
in round numbers.
Yeah.
Now, of course, our old friend Charlie Crist was the sacrificial lamb this time around. And look, everybody hates Charlie. It's like a movie theme. Republicans hate him because he left the Republican Party. Democrats hate him because he left the Republican Party and became a Democrat.
Yeah.
And no one trusts him. And his brand had become so corroded over the years, from being that lovely young man that all the little grandmas in Sarasota or in Clearwater wanted their daughter to marry. Oh,
The short shorts, and the
short shorts, the white Ferrari, the whole Charlie thing, right? Long story short, Charlie Crist's brand was terrible, and Ron DeSantis outspent him by 1 jillion to 1.
Yeah.
Now, when people say Ron DeSantis won by 19 points, the question is not how did he do that. The question is, why didn't he win by 29 points? He crushed Charlie financially. I mean, we're talking 15 to 1, folks. Crushed him. Ran a real statewide blowout media campaign, blowout digital campaign, had everything, door knockers, canvassers, calls, everything was going on for DeSantis, and he only won by 19 points. And so
it's kind of a David and Goliath scenario, is what you're saying.
it's more like David and the fleas that were hiding in Goliath's loincloth. I mean, this guy is like, Ron DeSantis was handed the keys to the most devastating political party machine in the country, bar none. I've done races in 38 states. I've been all over this place. I know American politics pretty damn well. I sat in any number of party meetings where they're talking about budgets on an order of magnitude smaller than Florida's campaign budgets.
Mm-hmm.
And yet Ron DeSantis wins by only 19 points. He should have crushed Charlie. Charlie should have been at single digits by the time this was all over, the beating they gave the guy. Now, that inheriting that machine exists for the Republicans. It does not exist for Ron DeSantis personally. Because that same machine that was born under the era of Jeb and Tom Slade and grew as Jeb was governor was inherited. It was a hostile takeover, I grant you, but inherited by Rick Scott. Right. And the power of that machine was inherited by Marco Rubio. And then it was inherited by Ron DeSantis. And it was inherited by any statewide Republican, because that's where the money is. That's where the power is. That's where the lobbyists are going to say, why, of course, I think your policies are wonderful, and I'm just going to write you this $100,000 check because I might need some help. So, look, Florida is, the power of the Republican system here is enormous. The power of Ron DeSantis, he is the temporary occupant of it. Think of it as the presidency. While you're the president, you're the most powerful human being on earth. You can launch nuclear weapons without too much problem. But the day you walk out of the Oval and your replacement puts his hand on the Bible on the west front steps of the Capitol, you are a guy, maybe you have a Secret Service detail, but you don't get to launch nuclear weapons anymore. That's where Ron DeSantis is going to be in the very immediate future.
How long? What's the over and under? What's your over and under for how long he stays in? Do you think he stays in until until Super Tuesday?
They're poor.
No, I mean the race. Sorry.
Oh. Look. My belief, and I have some information on this, is that they've been that a lot of his major donors, a lot of their friends are like, you should not let him beat you in Florida. That's a bad precedent.
Yeah, I've heard that.
But I've also heard that Casey is like, no, you're staying until you die. You know why? Casey wants those sweet private jet rides. Look, when this campaign is over, you will find that they spent more money on private aircraft in the super PAC and the campaign, and from the Republican Party of Florida, a little bird told me, than as a matter of proportion than any campaign prior to that.
Wow. What does that mean to the average listener? They're wasting campaign money that they should be using running ads, or
right. It's costing them $20,000 an hour to commute on a G550 or a Falcon jet back and forth to Iowa, and they're doing it a lot, and so they're burning through millions of dollars so that Ron and Casey can fly in comfort, as opposed to, I mean, look, I've been on campaign planes where the candidates were back in Coach 2 many times. Before he became the nominee in 20, W was flying around commercial.
Yeah.
He wasn't on a private jet every day.
Yeah.
And so, look, they like the lifestyle. She likes the spotlight and the lifestyle. Okay, and I can tell you this, I have had a disproportionate number of private jet rides in my life because of what I do for a living. And
you're a pilot, aren't you? A pilot?
I am a pilot too. Yeah, but I don't fly a jet. I fly a single engine prop plane built in the 1960s.
Vintage.
Nice. Antique. Just like me. But she likes the lifestyle. She likes the jet rides. She likes the adulation. She really wanted to be the Jackie O, Nancy Reagan figure in the DeSantis administration. They had a crisp vision of this in their minds, and unfortunately, it just doesn't. They just don't connect like that outside of a pretty narrow base. And look, there were a lot of people in Florida politics, not in the lobbying or the professional political class, but in the activist class, who really thought DeSantis was going to be president. They really believed it. A lot of the people around him in the Capitol, on the plaza level, were like, well, I'm going to be the Secretary of Commerce.
Right.
I'm going to do this or that. I'm going to pick out my office now in the West Wing. I want to make sure that I'm in at least this. Never do that shit. Never get ahead of yourself. The only easy day was yesterday, and when you wake up tomorrow, there's going to be an equal pile of hard shit to do, and so they got ahead of the curve. They got ahead of their own skis, however you want to phrase it. And there are a lot of people who believe that the old method of winning office in Florida disappeared when Trump beat Marco and Jeb so badly in 2016, and they sort of recalibrated. And DeSantis thought a lot of this could be won by trolling, and the very online Christina Pushaw, the young incel fascist club of her Twitter followers. They really thought they could win it based on that, and they missed what actually elected Trump the first time, was that he was a shit tier celebrity, but a celebrity nonetheless. And I think Casey, like a lot of people in the local news business, really wants to be a celebrity, really wants to be famous, really wants to be, to visit, as Clive James called it, the fame planet. And I think that's why she wants to stick in. There is some talk that she's going to run for governor in 2026.
A lot of talk in Tallahassee.
We'll see how that goes. Between Byron Donalds, Matt Gaetz, and God knows who else. And look, the DeSantis brand at that point will be hanging by a very fine thread, because unless he's dead, Donald Trump has a memory of any slight, any insult, any degradation he has suffered.
Oh, Susie Wiles too.
Oh, yes, that precisely.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that moment where she announces and Donald Trump tweets or truths or whatever platform he's besmirching by that point. Liberal Ron DeSantis and his wife Casey defied me. They're hateful. Byron Donalds is my man for Florida.
Right.
And the same, like the holy grail, by the way, of the DeSantis world, from what I'm told, the holy grail is that during the build the wall spot, there are a bunch of outtakes where Ron and Casey are like, this is fucking stupid.
We need those.
We need those. Believe me, I know who has them, or I think I know who has them. And they're not talking to me, sadly. But at some point, Trump always punishes the unbelievers. At some point,
right.
He always goes back and even if that person has bent the knee and endorsed him and said, I want to work with him. Look, Ted Cruz will never get over his PTSD from Donald Trump. He will never get over it. It will never be any better. Ted Cruz.
Yeah, Ted.
Yeah,
No.
Ted Cruz. Yes,
I was making a joke.
There are two types of people in this world: Ted Cruz and people who hate Ted Cruz.
Right.
But there's a real possibility, because look, here's the thing: Trump is going to beat DeSantis in Florida so badly, at such a cataclysmic level, that Ron has nothing to offer him. Ron has nothing to give him. He doesn't need Ron DeSantis' endorsement.
Right.
Ron DeSantis could try to campaign against him. And we welcome Ron to the Lincoln Project. Just kidding, LOL.
Right.
But Ron could campaign against him and say, everything I said about Donald Trump was true, and I oppose him, and I'm gonna write in Ronald Reagan or whatever, write in Casey DeSantis. Do what Mitt Romney did, write in his wife's name. And it wouldn't make a single decimal point of difference to where Trump's number is going to end up.
Well, let me ask you, I know we have to rush here towards the end, and I really thank you so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I got to get you back. I'm going to have to get you back on. So I want to ask you two questions. One is Trump going to get reelected? And the other is there a place in the Republican Party for moderates anymore, either in Florida or nationally?
Weirdly, in Florida, there's a better place for them than in a lot of states, because there are a few things in Florida that are still red lines, including some environmental things like offshore drilling, which is universally hated.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might, and there are some more moderate Republicans in the suburbs of Tampa, Orlando, Palm Beach, Miami, Jacksonville, which elected a Democrat by some grace of God. And Florida's about to experience the oldest of the boomers dying off, and the oldest of the boomers are dying off. And so we're going to see a shift demographically from some folks in that west part of Florida, from Dixie County down to Pinellas. That's going to age out very quickly. That's going to turn over a little bit. And some of those younger Republicans, while they are MAGA and Trump, they do not come from the as much of an evangelical background. The second thing is Donald Trump going to be reelected? Unless the Democrats get their shit together and stop complaining and bitching about Joe Biden, yes, they need to get the fuck to work. They need to stop all the primary talk and we're going to vote for somebody else if you don't do everything we want. And I didn't get my line item in the Inflation Recovery Act, so I'm not happy, or I don't like your position on Israel, or any of the. It's America versus Trump. If the race is framed as a choice between Donald Trump and America's future, we win. If it is framed as a race between Trump and Biden, Trump probably wins.
If the election were today?
Trump wins. So, a lot of work to do, and I at the age of 60, I spend 100 plus hours a week doing it. So
you guys are doing a great job for what you do, and I'm constantly either receiving or sending your videos from the Lincoln Project. So,
well, I've got one coming out in about a week that is going to, I think, cause some upset in Trump world.
I know you have to go. Do you have time for one more question?
Sure. Yeah, fire away.
Did you see, when you started with the Lincoln Project and you were starting with the Never Trump movement, if it's a movement, did you foresee the status, that the kind of tin god status that Trump would have as he is today, the total control?
I wrote about it back in 2015. I wrote about it a lot in 2016. And I told people that we were on a path where populist authoritarianism would produce exactly what it has produced.
I have that book, by the way.
A religious and cult-like devotion, not to an idea or an ideal or a philosophy or a country, but to one man. And that's not conservatism. That's not democracy. That is, an authoritarian clown. And yes, he's clownish, but he's surrounded by more serious people who have a much darker vision of the future. And he doesn't even realize 90% of what people like Bannon and Miller and all these other weird constellation of scumbags want to do. He just wants to be famous and protected and rich. And we're at a terrifying inflection point. I've lived with this for 8 years. I did not do this to make money or be famous, because I didn't ever want to be famous before all this happened. And I made more money before all this happened, regardless of what people think about the Lincoln Project. My private sector career in politics was vastly more lucrative. Cut zeros off the end of what I made, right? And I stuck with it because, weirdly, as the jaded, cynical political consultant, it turns out I actually believed in something. It turns out I really did believe in the country and the Constitution and the founding principles and the ideas that define me as a conservative coming up, which were not all the hot button, social issues, but it was, restraint of state power, belief in the rule of law, adherence to the Constitution, a sense of responsibility and integrity and propriety. And none of that exists anymore. And so, there are days I feel like, the last priest of a dead religion. But here we are. And, the Never Trump movement, weirdly, since the Dobbs decision, has actually expanded a little bit. There are people, because of Dobbs, mostly women, mostly more affluent women, who are like, that ain't me. That ain't me, bro.
Yeah.
And
that's a big deal. That is a big deal.
We could talk for hours about it.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by it, and I'll leave you with one last quick story.
Great.
One of my friends is a very serious, good-hearted pro-lifer. Like, supports adoption, has put tons of money over the years into adoption and guardian ad litem programs, because really believes in the pro-life, either a kinder, gentler kind of pro-lifer. He said to me recently, he goes, I spent 40 years of my life encouraging people to choose adoption over abortion. We've helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women across the country. And he goes, and now I think the pro-life movement is actually dead, because now this is just an anti-woman movement. And he's not wrong. So with that, I got to hop.
And it's been so great pleasure catching up, and you promise you'll come back, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
Rick Wilson, thank you again.
Thanks for having me, Dara.
Bye.
See you soon.
A Deeper Dive with Dara is hosted by Dara Cam, produced by Ryan Daly, and music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC, and performed by Ryan Daly and Danny Reyes.